This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Beginning today's show is Blaine Stroble, Northeast Community District Forester with the Kansas Forest Service, to discuss bagworms and how they can damage trees, but also be managed. K-State's Ernie Minton keeps the show rolling by discussing his monthly statewide e-newsletter. He also mentions what is currently taking place on K-State's Manhattan campus. Cynthia Domenghini, a horticulture and garden management instructor in Kansas State University's Department of Horticulture and Natural Resources, ends today's show by providing information for cleaning up a storm-damaged landscape. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show talking about bagworms with Northeast Community District Forester with the Kansas Forest Service, Blaine Stroble. Blaine, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Blaine, as we're talking about bagworms, first learning a little bit about what they are.
So bagworms are an insect that primarily attack conifers, junipers, arborvitae, different things like that. And what they do is they feed on the foliage on these species and can cause really detrimental harm to them. Prolonged year after year feeding can actually cause, mature species to die off.
And why right now is this something that producers might want to be keeping in mind, or homeowners?
So right now is a great time to be kind of mindful of them because we're rolling into bagworm season. They overwinter as eggs in the bags, and here about mid-May in Kansas is when we start to see them hatching. So you won't necessarily notice them as they hatch because they're really, really small, but as they start to grow, you'll start to notice them crawling around and moving, and it's definitely something to be mindful of because as soon as you start seeing them is when you need to start taking actions to manage them.
And you say really, really small. How small are they, Blaine?
So when they hatch, they're only about 1/25th of an inch long. So just really, really little, even hard to see with the naked eye for a lot of people. So they grow fairly fast. Just within a couple weeks after they hatch, they can be up to about 1/4 inch long. And at that point is when they're mature enough to start creating this silk, which is what their bags are actually made out of. So they're feeding on the foliage and they're creating this silk, creating their bag, and then they also use that same silk to transfer from plant to plant. So the wind will catch that silk, blow them from one tree to another, and that's how they spread from place to place. Sometimes you may find them on your vehicle, on your house. They don't really have control over where they go. It's all up to Mother Nature on where she wants to blow.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that life cycle for a bagworm?
Right now, they are overwintering in the egg, and when they come out as larvae, like I said, they're really small, 1/25th of an inch long, and they will feed on the foliage and grow. Once they hit full maturity, about 1 inch to 2 inches long, then they will go into the pupa form. And then that's when you see the bags hanging on the trees like a Christmas ornament. Once they emerge from that, the males will emerge as a moth, and the females will actually stay in the bag. The females don't have any purpose other than really to reproduce. And so the male moths will fly around, go up to the bags that the females are in, reproduce, and then the males will actually fly off and die. And then the females will stay in the bags, lay eggs, and then the females themselves will die. So this process restarts over the next year. So it's just a 1-year life cycle, but one bag can hold anywhere from 500 to 1,000 eggs. So it's so important to make sure that you're keeping an eye out for them and managing them, because just letting one slip by can cause thousands of new bagworms the following year.
And you mentioned they look like little ornaments off the tree, but what do those ornaments then look like?
So the bagworm will actually pull foliage from whatever it's feeding on and add that to its bag to camouflage it. So if it's feeding on something like a cedar, it may pull pieces of cedar off and add it to their bag to look like the cedar tree. And so that's why you'll notice when bags are forming, they'll be green, and then come winter, after that bag has, or the foliage has dried out and is no longer living, they'll turn brown. They'll do the same thing with deciduous. So that's where you can see kind of a difference between the bags, what they've been feeding on. The bag from a bagworm feeding on a deciduous tree is going to look substantially different than the bag feeding on a conifer.
And what's that range of damage that a bagworm can do to a tree?
So they focus on conifers, and year after year, prolonged feeding on the foliage can actually be detrimental and kill the conifer. You see some damage with deciduous trees, but unlike conifers, the reason why they're so susceptible to bagworm damage is as the bagworms feed, the conifers can't reproduce that foliage and replace it as fast as the bagworms are eating it. The deciduous trees have the ability to replace about equally, if not faster, than the bagworms can eat. So that's why you see a lot more death in the conifers compared to deciduous trees.
How might people want to manage bagworms on their trees then?
Well, from a landscape kind of point of view, on something that you can reach, such as a bush or a ornamental shrub, really hand picking is going to be one of the best things you can do, going out in the winter or early spring before those bagworms have hatched and physically pulling the bags off of the shrub is a great method. The big issue with that is, like I said earlier, that single bag may have 500 to 1,000 eggs. So if you leave one, there's still a full population that can hatch and take over. So it's really, really important that you pull all of them if you do decide to go that route. And then even once they're picked, you have to soak them in soapy water for about 15 minutes. And then after they've soaked, you'll have to pour them out on the ground in full sun and let them die that way. If you just dump them into a garbage pail or a compost pile or something like that, those bagworms will actually continue to grow and hatch and continue their life cycle. So that is one of the one things about picking, is that it's very time consuming. If you miss one, you can lose all of the work that you've put forth. And so that's where a lot of people tend to go towards insecticides, spraying. You don't want to spray when they're brand new, when they first hatch. You want to give it a little bit when they hit that 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch kind of length is what you're looking for, which is in June for Kansas. They hatch in May, and then come June, they'll be about that 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch length, and that's when you want to do your first spray application. And from there, you want to spray weekly for up to 4 weeks. This will allow for new bagworms that are blowing in from the wind or hatching late to continually be affected by that pesticide. So it can still be time consuming, but with proper timing, you can really do some damage. So a big thing that a lot of people end up doing that is not necessarily counterproductive, but ineffective, is waiting until they're full-sized and they're actually physically seeing them carrying that bag around in that 1 to 2 inch range towards August. People will think that then is the time to spray, thinking that they're covering the bag and that's going to kill the whole unit. But unfortunately, come that time when they hit that 1 to 2 inch range, the larvae have really slowed down on their feeding and they're really, really, really tough. So insecticides most of the time just don't have enough of effect to kill the bagworms when they hit that age.
When people are using insecticides, is it a quick mist or really a saturation?
No, so you really have to saturate it. I mean, to the point where the branches are actually dripping. because if you don't have adequate coverage, it still allows bagworms to get on that and take over, and it can almost make it worse because they're more concentrated to a certain area on that tree. So if you don't have adequate coverage, it's almost as good as not spraying at all. So it's very, very important to make sure that you get that tree covered completely from top to bottom, and really make sure that it's on nice and heavy.
And is there a little bit of biological control help?
So you would think that it would be, a huge thing for birds and other predators to eat these bagworms when they're young and crawling around. But there's really just so many of them that there's not enough biological help to control them. Birds can only do so much. And when you have, thousands and thousands of bagworms crawling around on these trees and shrubs, the birds just can't keep up with it. So you can't rely on it.
If people would like to find out more information about bagworms, any recommendations for them?
Yeah, so we have some links on our website, Kansas Forest Service, and they have some really great articles and documents about bagworms, how you can control them, a couple different insecticides that are recommended, that we've had pretty good luck with, and you can also reach out to your local K-State Research and Extension agent, and they would be happy to forward you along some more information as well.
Blaine, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information about bagworms.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, and thank you.
That was Northeast Community District Forester with the Kansas Forest Service, Blaine Stroble. You can find the resources that he mentioned linked in today's show notes on agtoday.net or by going to the Kansas Forest Service website at kansasforest.org. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Thursday show with Director of K-State Research and Extension and Dean of K-State's College of Agriculture, Ernie Minton. Ernie, thanks for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here, Shelby. It's a great day.
Ernie, you recently released your statewide and kind of talking through some of the different articles and what was included in that. And first off, mentioning wheat disease management.
That's right. We're coming into really an important part of the growing season for the Kansas wheat crop, and so with that comes the threat of diseases. And we've got a crackerjack crew based primarily out of our Department of Plant Pathology that do a really nice job in terms of helping us watch out for those wheat diseases. Both Kelsey Onifree and Eric DeWolf are mentioned in the article. It's a team, though, that includes extension professionals and, of course, folks in the Department of Agronomy as well.
And not only a great team of wheat disease management people and who know a lot about that, but really all the crops that are important to Kansas.
Oh, that's true. We're thinking about wheat this time of year as harvest is approaching. But yes, absolutely correct. The other row crops that contribute significantly to the Kansas ag economy are on their mind as well.
Something else really important to Kansas, water, and a publication that recently got released on that topic.
Yeah, another story that's very timely is water and access, livestock access to water. In my travels these days, primarily with fundraising, but as I run into folks from Farm Bureau and other agencies, just a lot of concern about the availability of water in farm ponds and those kinds of things, which are absolutely essential for livestock production. So this article is really timely in that regard. Not a lot we can do about what falls from the sky, but in terms of managing, maybe there are some things that can be used to our advantage.
And this publication, titled Waterers and Watering Systems, a handbook for livestock producers and landowners, really provides resources and answers quite a few questions.
That's right. Again, it's a matter of management in terms of trying to maximize and use most efficiently the water resources that are available.
As summer does come around, usually so does gardening, and sometimes food preservation comes from that as well, and that's also included in this month's Statewide.
Yes, home gardening and vegetable preservation, fruit and vegetable preservation are things that a lot of folks who do garden, appreciate knowledge for, and Karen Blakesley, a great extension professional, food scientist, really has been helpful in that regard, providing great information. And also, the concern, of course, is about preserving that food, which maintains not only its nutritional value, but also is safe to eat once you pop that jar open again.
And Karen does help with the center here if people have questions or needing to find some more resources.
That's right. She's tied with our Rapid Response Center, and Karen has been for many years a great resource to folks who have questions about those topics.
And wanting to keep people healthy, whether it comes to doing food preservation properly or getting their annual wellness check.
That's correct. And Elaine Johannes is cited in that article as one who reminds the readers of that really great practice of going to see the health professional at least annually for that well checkup. I just happened to be listening this morning on the Today Show about the need for regular mammograms because of the appearance earlier for younger women of breast cancer. And so regular awareness, annual checkups are actually a great prescription for a healthy life.
Wanting to remind our farmers and ranchers, of course, then, and other people that you can go to the doctor even when you're feeling well to make sure you hopefully stay that way?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's recommended for sure.
As people are thinking about caring for themselves, also important for them to keep in mind their homes, and in this statewide newsletter, wanting to mention how to safeguard homes from fires, hopefully.
Yeah, wildfires, of course, this time of year with spring winds blowing are, can be an issue. And certainly we're in that time of year when in the Kansas Flint Hills prescribed fire is ongoing, and so there are opportunities for those fires to threaten homes. And this is a nice piece from Eric Ward, heads up from Kansas Forest Service, that deals with some strategies to try to fireproof your home. That's not, always possible from 100% protection, but there are things you can do to lessen the opportunities for fire to get started, and a lot of them make sense. They have to do with moving that fuel away from the home. Stacked firewood can be a problem if it's close to the house, debris and gutters, those kinds of things. And so this article does a nice job of running those down.
And Ernie, is there a resource from K-State where people could watch to hopefully better protect their homes from fires? Yeah,
so we have this series, Kansas Mesonet, that we think of primarily as a weather monitoring, but it's a really great resource for that as for wildfire monitoring as well.
And as we've entered the month of May, it does mean school is coming to an end. And what's the atmosphere you're feeling around campus?
Well, for those of us who are drawn to this profession because of that kind of annual cycle in the fall of students coming here as new freshmen with their new chapter in their growth and maturation laid out in front of them. And then in May, of course, after 4 years, or in some cases more than 4 years, it's finally time for graduation. This is another signal of a new beginning as folks begin their career. Couple that with the lawns around campus greening up, flowers are out, and those kinds of things. So it's just a great time of year on campus for celebration.
And thinking of a new chapter, there's some construction going on campus.
Yeah, right. So the folks hadn't been to Manhattan, maybe they haven't seen that the construction fence is up around the green space between Call and Weber Hall, and what that signals is that construction for the Global Center for Grain and Food Innovation is just right around the corner. Construction, of course, doesn't happen in a day, so looking at maybe 18 months of construction there. So sometime in mid to maybe third quarter of 2026, so we should have a new building there. and a great look on that corner. And inside, folks won't necessarily be able to see, but significant renovations to both Call and Weber Hall that will go along with that new construction.
Ernie, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
I'm happy to do so. Thank you.
That was Director of K-State Research and Extension and Dean of Kansas State University's College of Agriculture, Ernie Minton. In today's show notes on agtoday.net, I will place a few different links. The first one will be a link to his most recent statewide e-newsletter if you'd like to check it out. Following that will be a link if you'd like to sign up to receive his monthly e-newsletter. And after that will be a link to the Mesonet tool where you can check out what the relative humidity and wind is, as well as find the fire danger forecast. You can find that for yourself if you'd like by going to mesonet.ksu.edu and then clicking on Fire. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by the Kansas Livestock Association's Scarlett Maydinger. Because as weather warms, people fire up their grills and reach for mouth-watering steaks and beef burgers. And May is a perfect time to celebrate with beef.
Surrounded by cattlemen and cattlewomen, Governor Laura Kelly signed a proclamation April 26th declaring May as Beef Month and recognizing the positive contributions the beef community makes to the environmental, economic, and nutritional well-being of Kansas. Renowned for its expansive prairies, the state has nearly 44.8 million acres of agricultural ground. However, not all this land is suitable for growing crops. By utilizing the 14 million acres of pasture and rangeland that otherwise would go unused, many of the 22,000 Kansas ranchers can significantly increase the amount of high-quality protein grown for consumption. The Sunflower State ranks third in the United States for the number of cattle on ranches and in feed yards, with 6.2 million head, which is more than twice the state's population. Kansas also ranks third in total red meat production, with beef representing more than 6 billion pounds of that total. In addition, the beef industry has a direct output of more than $11 billion to the state's economy, with the ranching and cattle feeding sectors employing nearly 20,000 Kansans and the meat packing and prepared meat manufacturing industries employing 46,000. Please join the Kansas Livestock Association in celebrating Beef Month and the vital role this high-quality protein plays in bringing communities, friends, and families together, while also supporting the livelihoods of many across the state. I'm Scarlett Maydinger.
Once again, that was Kansas Livestock Association's Scarlett Maydinger. If you'd like to check out more from the Kansas Livestock Association, you can do so by going to their website at www.kla.org. Again, that is www.kla.org. I would like to wish all of our beef producers Happy Beef Month. We're now cutting to that short break on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Cynthia Domenghini for this week's Horticulture segment.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. Spring storms in Kansas can cause a lot of damage to homes and the home landscape. The cleaning up afterwards requires patience and caution. Cynthia Domenghini, a horticulture and garden management instructor in Kansas State University's Department of Horticulture and Natural Resources, discusses how to manage a storm-damaged landscape. Well, unfortunately, Cynthia, there has been, no lack of damage caused by storms over the last couple of weeks, and something that we really need to keep in mind because there are some safety factors that are involved. It's not just the landscape, but there are other things that can also cause problems.
Absolutely. Whenever we've had these big storms, before you attempt any type of yard cleanup or anything like that, you want to make sure that you're aware of hazards caused by downed power lines, and make sure that you're not entering that space until those things have been tidied up, cleaned up, picked up, however you want to say it, by professionals. So before you walk out and start cleaning up broken branches, be aware of your power lines. And if you do notice anything that looks abnormal, contact the power company before trying to do anything on your own.
I always think about that, too, because a lot of times people go outside when the power is off, And that's great, but the power can come back on at any time, so remember that as well.
Absolutely, right.
You also mentioned trees, and that is another very hazardous situation because sometimes it's hard to tell if a branch is completely broken off, if it could fall on you with another high gust, so another thing to watch out for.
Exactly. Before you're doing the cleanup, you need to do a good evaluation of what condition your landscape is in. And if you're unsure, it's always better to contact a professional to help you out.
We sometimes see trees that have been blown over, another consideration.
Yeah, for trees that have been completely uprooted, those are likely going to need to be taken out altogether. And again, professionals can help give you that advice. There is a point where saving a tree is not the responsible choice because it's more susceptible to further damage and becoming even more dangerous in the future with other storms.
And that's another reason why you need that professional help because you maybe can't just stand that back up and try and stake it. That's probably not going to work.
Exactly. Not only is it going to be more likely to blow over again, but it's been put under a lot of stress. And that's going to open it up to other conditions with diseases and infestations of pests. So a stressed plant is a really great host for all kinds of other problems.
Well, that's a good point. A lot of times the ones that do have the most damage are ones that were damaged to begin with. We maybe just didn't know it.
Exactly. Yeah, there could already have been problems going on under the ground, which caused it to be shallow-rooted. Some varieties of trees just are more shallow-rooted and are more likely to suffer damage from these heavy storms, which is why we are repeatedly suggesting for people to choose the right plant for the right location.
Is there anything that we can do ourselves when it comes to trees? Is there some trimming that we can do?
Absolutely. So once you find out that your area is safe to enter, if you've got small branches that are broken off of trees and shrubs, you can obviously go ahead and cut those back. We recommend that you use sharp cutting devices. For shrubs, you would want to use a pair of sharp bypass pruners more than likely and cut back to the next healthy node to remove that damaged wood. For trees, you would cut back to the next healthiest branch, or if it does need to be taken all the way back to the trunk, that's fine. Just don't cut flush with the trunk. You would want to cut back to the collar, which is the area where the branch attaches to the tree trunk.
The other thing we want to keep in mind that I didn't think about is covering up some of those bare areas with mulch.
Exactly, yeah. With these heavy rainstorms that we have where a lot of water's coming down in a short amount of time, if your soil is exposed, there's going to be some compaction going on. And then when the soil dries, it'll start to form this crusted layer, which is going to be difficult for plants to thrive in. So by keeping your soil covered with mulch, that kind of displaces the water and makes it so that there's not so much compaction.
That's Cynthia Domenghini, a horticulture and garden management instructor in K-State's Department of Horticulture and Natural Resources, with information for managing a storm-damaged landscape. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.